All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual voter engagement summit. I'm so excited that you all have decided to join in live with us. And I also want to welcome those of you who may be on the replay as well. Hello to you. My name is Dr. Leslie Francisco McClendon, and I serve as the senior pastor of Calvary Community Church, also known as C3, located in the beautiful city of Hampton, Virginia. And it is my honor to host tonight and to serve as the moderator for this event. Hey, if you haven't done so already, would you please do us a ginormous favor and just click the share button at the bottom of your screen and share this with your friends, your family, your coworkers, whoever may need to know this awesome information that is going out tonight. Also, we are an engaging community, so if you'd like to leave comments, you can do so as well. We will be putting those up, and we are also going to have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of our summit, and so please reserve your questions if you should have any for later. And so, as stated before, we are grateful that you are with us tonight, and we're looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. A special thanks to all of our partners for Gamma Theta and Gamma Upsilon Omega chapters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, as well as the Virginia Black Leadership Organizing Collaborative, also known as BLOC. And so some of you, we have a pretty decent amount of numbers up here, and so we're grateful for that. If you haven't shared this, please do so again. But some of you may be thinking or wondering why this forum? And we hope by the end of tonight, you'll have that question answered as we delve in to the importance of voting, the voting process, as well as voters' engagement leading up to November 3rd, which is, of course, the presidential election. So to help us to prepare for tonight, I want to take a couple of moments to introduce the meeting format as well as our panelists. Tonight, we will only be together for roughly an hour, and so we want to make sure that we honor your time. So thank you again for being with us. And we'll have a panel discussion. We're going to have a time for Q&A. And then we will also leave you with a couple of resources as well. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce you to our panelists for the evening. First up, I'd like to introduce to you all Dr. Marilyn Salisbury. Dr. Marilyn, would you introduce yourself to our community tonight?
Good afternoon, Dr. McClendon. Good afternoon, Calvary Community Church. My name is Dr. Marilyn Salisbury. I'm an associate professor at Hampton University in the Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences. I'm a member of the Gamma Upsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, and I'm a representative of the Political Connection Committee.
Welcome. We are so honored to have you tonight. Thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Camille Smith. Would you come in and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Camille Smith. I'm a graduating senior psychology major, marketing minor from Baltimore, Maryland, and I am a member of the Gamma Theta chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Wonderful. Welcome. Our next panelist that I want to introduce you all to is Charis Demery. Would you come in and introduce yourself to our community tonight?
Hi, and good evening, everyone. My name is Charis Demery. I'm a graduating senior biology pre-med major from Columbia, Maryland, and I'm a member of the Gamma Theta chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Wonderful. And then last but certainly not least, we have Cameron Bell from VA BLOC. Would you introduce yourself to our community tonight?
Good evening, everybody. I'm the lead organizer with the Virginia Black Leadership Organizing Collaborative, and we do a lot of work in Newport News and Hampton, Virginia to help build empowered communities through civic engagement, leadership development, integrated voter involvement. So thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Well, I am so honored to be speaking with all of you tonight. I'm really looking forward to some fruitful dialogue, as I know those who are tuning in with us are as well. So would you all do us a favor, those of you who are in the virtual audience tonight, would you just put up some virtual hand clap emojis so we can make our panelists feel so welcomed tonight, because I know that this is going to be an exciting time. Yep, you can send up some hearts, show some love. I can't wait to see what's going to happen tonight. So now that you've met the panelists, I want to transition to some conversation. And I actually want to start off by talking about the importance of the youth vote. And to do that, we actually have two young ladies from the Gamma Theta chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. First up, we have Camille Smith. So Camille, would you just take a couple of minutes and let us know your thoughts? What is the importance of the youth or the young adult vote? We want to hear from you tonight. We're going to make sure you're not muted.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to give some like background in terms of like percentages for the youth vote. So I read a quote by President Abraham Lincoln, and he said that the ballot is stronger than the bullet. As we all know, that the last 2 centuries ago, women and people of color, they just got their right to vote. But today we do face a new challenge, which is young people don't vote. A few reasons that the youth vote is so important and you should vote as soon as you turn 18 is simply because your right to vote will help the country accurately represent its people and help make the United States a better democracy. Voting shapes your future. If you fail to vote, you are yielding the power to others and making the decisions about the leaders and the laws that will shape and lead our society. It is likely that the decisions of older adults do not align with the perspective of the younger generation. Just like in the last presidential election, only 46% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted, compared to the 70% of those 65 and older. Some don't understand the state and local elections. They have a greater impact on your day-to-day life, and it is important to vote in all of these elections. The dynamics that affect our day-to-day lives are multifaceted and far from straightforward. So it is essential to understand the dynamics in order to help advance more and more equitable civic opportunities for the youth. There are many social media platforms that will allow you to register to vote, and it makes it a very simple and easy process, just like Instagram. The first thing you see on Instagram when you get on there today is a link to register to vote. You just have to choose your state. They've made the process so much easier. I was fortunate enough to go to a school where voting is a priority. Mm-hmm. And one day, my freshman year, I was just walking to the CAF and they asked me, was I registered to vote? And I wasn't. So just that mindset, like you're not even thinking about voting. I'm sure a lot of other people aren't. They don't think about that. The first thing, when it comes to politics. So it is very important for us in the youth community to realize the impact that youth people have on politics. You see it from protesting to the outrage on social media. We all have a voice, and we must use it in a proper way, which is starting to vote on all levels. So if you are out there and you're listening and you're under the age of 30, which is considered the youth, please go out there and vote. You don't even know how much of an impact your voice will have.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. You said some very poignant statements. One of the ones that really just kind of stuck out to me was that the ballot is stronger than the bullet. I mean, that really hit home. And I think it was so necessary. So if you are under 30 and you're watching this, and even if you are over 30 and maybe you have children or nieces or nephews or someone you come into contact with, please encourage them to vote, because like Camille says, your vote matters and it makes a difference. Did you have anything else to add to that, or are you?
No, good? I hope it was short and simple and to the point. It's important. That's all I'll say.
Thank you for sharing your insights. That was very helpful. And I hope what you said to heart. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Camille. The next person that I want to bring up to expound upon that and talk some more about the importance of the youth vote. And for those of you who are just coming on, the youth vote is considered for anyone who is under 30 years of age. So 18 to 30 is considered the youth vote. And so I want to bring in Charis Demery. Charis is also from Hampton University as well. Would you just take a couple of minutes also so that we can hear your thoughts on the importance of the youth and young adult vote?
Yes, so a lot of young voters think it's not a big deal to vote, but every vote counts. Young voters account for half of the voting population, which makes us a powerful political force. It exercises our rights to vote in a more relevant now than ever in the United States. And then with the rapid evolving political climate and growth of virtual hubs, there's a much greater access to information than ever before, but young people don't take advantage of it. So young voters have the power to sway elections. For example, in the 2014 and 2018 presidential elections, young voter turnout between the ages of 18 and 29 was low. In 2014, the turnout was at a low of 20%, but in 2018, it improved to 36%. But furthermore, the youth vote is important because you can be in charge. Like, voting gives you the power to make important choices, and you can decide what you like and what you don't like, and you let your voice be heard by doing that. Also, it helps you shape your future. Most adults don't understand like the youth perspective. So if you fail to vote, you're basically automatically letting the older adults make the decisions about like the leaders and the laws that will affect us for more than the 4 years. It'll be like continuously. And you automatically waive your right to complain. Voting demonstrates your good faith attempt to get the political outcome you desire. And it gives you every right to complain if things don't go your way. And we, the youth, are the future. So we need to use our voices by voting in every election, especially our local elections too. And if you guys wanted to get any more information, usually where I went was rockthevote.org. And you just pull up the website. It comes with the map of the United States comes up. So you get to pick your state where you live. And it tells you the deadline to send in your absentee ballot. It also tells you if you have like in-person voting or if you just have like the absentee voting. And then just to remind you guys to send in your ballot 10 to 15 days before the elections, just to make sure your vote is counted.
Awesome. Thank you, Charis. I basically heard you saying, don't complain or say about this current state of events if you don't make your voice be heard.
Exactly.
And so that the vote is very important. And like, I think people don't realize, like you said, the numbers were so low at the last election that you actually have the voice and the power to sway the election, right? So what would it look like if the youth vote, those under 30 came out in large droves? And even as you were talking, like, not only do I see the youth as the future, but also the current, the present. And we have the power. I say we, but I'm 31, so I guess I'm an adult vote now. But I'm still going to say we have the power to actually shape and form this election and determine the outcome. And so we appreciate your perspective, and I'm glad that you're bringing awareness to this issue. So thank you to both Camille and yourself for bringing awareness to why the youth vote is so important.
Thank you.
So y'all heard it here. You heard it from young people. You know, it's always interesting how we can be talking and saying what young people need to do, but when young people tell other young people what they need to do, it hits a different note. And so I'm loving this information. Are y'all enjoying this? I'd love to see in the comments what you're thinking about our virtual voter engagement summit so far. I definitely want to give it up for the two young ladies who just presented and rocked the house and just brought so much heat. And I'm looking forward to great things. And even as I heard them speak, you know, it makes you feel good to know that our future and our current is in good hands. And so I want to transition for a moment. We're going to transition to Dr. Marilyn Salisbury, who is representing the Gamma Upsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the chapter that sponsors the undergraduate chapter on campus.
You're correct.
And so would you just take some time and share with us tonight what we should know before we go to the polls?
Well, I was hoping that maybe my slides might be a little bit helpful to kind of give us some perspective about that this is not new. So right now we're experiencing a lot of challenges regarding voting. And I think you hear so much in the news and it can be very, very frustrating and kind of demoralizing. And so I just wanted to kind of make sure people understood this is not new. And if they did it in the past, we can do it now in the future. So next slide, please. So I won't go through all the timeline, but I want to pull out two special dates. 1870. So technically, voting began in this country in 1776. And when it did, white men and landowners. So, of course, that left us out. And then about 100 years later, 1870, that's when officially the 15th Amendment of our Constitution allowed us to vote. Now, unfortunately, what people don't know, in 1865, that was the founding of the Ku Klux Klan. And the Klan was anticipating some of these changes that were coming. And when the right to vote came, particularly to Black men, and that would be clear, Black men, what they did is they started doing poll taxes, literacy tests, intimidation, fraud, you name it, they did it. So basically they call those Jim Crow laws. And they were laws that are not official, but they were enforced indirectly, which basically intimidated people from voting. If you flip to the next slide, we had to wait quite a bit of time before Black women, 1920, got the right to vote. And that was with the 19th Amendment in the Constitution, which gave women the right to vote. Unfortunately, it gave white women the right to vote, and there was a delay for Black women. So Black women would register to vote, and of course, they still couldn't vote. That did not stop them. Fast forward a little bit further, please. And we will find that actually it was not until 1964. 1964. So technically, the 24th Amendment allowed African Americans the right to vote. That's the Civil Rights Act was fully moved forward. And then 1965, the next year, is when the Voter Rights Act was fully enacted. And of course, a lot of this was about the civil rights unrest that was going on. And basically, we've only had the right to vote as full citizens in this country as African Americans for approximately 55 years. 55 full years. So I want people to understand from all that time, from the beginning up until now, there's been lots of movement that has brought us forward. Can you get to the next slide for me, Dr. McClendon? One more time. All right. So as I mentioned, 1870, that's when we specifically were allowed to vote. Let me just make some point here. When men were allowed the right to vote, many Southern states not only use those Jim Crow rules, they use something called the grandfather clause. What that meant, your grandfather had to be free in order for you to vote. Now, of course, most people's grandparents were enslaved. So, of course, then they could not vote. So if your grandfather had not voted, if they were not free, you could not prove that you had the right to actually vote. That was one of the things that was put in place as a barrier. Next slide, please. In 1920, the year I mentioned that women had the right to vote, as I mentioned, Black women were not really formally allowed to. We would get to the poll and they would still do the taxes and the literacy tests and how many jelly beans in the jar, all these unusual things. But once again, it was people who were pioneers. So Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, she was in Florida and she had a boarding school for Black women. And what she decided to do is just take all those young women that were in her school, register them to vote, and show up to vote. Many people in the town realized that's what she was going to do. And once again, the Ku Klux Klan went onto her private grounds, surrounded her school, stayed there all night to intimidate her and her students from voting. That did not stop those young women from voting. They went anyway, and that broke a barrier down. Next slide, please. And this is one that really was the kicking off point for the civil rights movement. So everyone knows about Miss Rosa Parks. What they don't know is before Rosa Parks, there were 4 other women who tried to stay on the bus. So here we have a situation where a woman was arrested for relinquishing one of these Jim Crow rules again around the colored section. She wanted to sit on the bus became full, they asked her to move. She didn't want to move, but segregation was law, particularly in Montgomery. It says you have to move, but there were lots of contradictory laws in the book. It said, segregation can be enforced, but it can be ignored as well. So this is one of the reasons why this became a problem. What people didn't realize, though, is that when it came to the Montgomery bus issue, 70% of the people that rode the bus were African American. Your taxes from your state and local taxes pay for you to be able to subsidize your bus system. So the bus system, which was mostly being subsidized by Black people, was still saying to Black people, you have to either get off the bus or leave the bus or stand if it gets full because white people are on the bus. Amazing. What could have stopped that? Perhaps who we elected. If you go to the next slide, what you'll find out is that when they tried to actually get help from the president said, you know what? That's a state's right. And this is why that federal law that we were talking about is so important. What people don't know, because Mrs. Parks did her trial, it was local, she was acquitted. But after that process, she lost her job, she lost her career, she lost her home. Who encouraged her? We don't hear much about Mr. Parks. This is Mr. Parks. That's her husband. He's the one that said, Rosa, go to trial. He's the one that when it became a federal trial issue, Rosa, keep going with it. And he too, he was a professional barber. He lost his shop. He lost his job. And they had to literally move away from Alabama and move up to Detroit, Michigan to fully rebuild their lives. But these are people who made the decision that voting and having privileges was important. So I just want to put a pause here. We protest, and it sometimes looks like we don't go anywhere, but it's progress. The success of that bus boycott launched a nationwide effort to end what we knew as racial segregation in public facilities. So they took that one situation and extrapolated it. So that was the kickoff point. And I mentioned those 4 of the women. That was a case called Browder versus Gale. It went to court and they won. And so now if you were a person that needed to use public facilities, public transportations, that set it off where Black people could now use that. So it ended successfully. There's a price, but that protest caused us to move forward. Next slide, please. Oh, one more thing. That boycott lasted 381 days. 381 days. So whenever we get tired, think about it. Those people used their own cars.
Wow.
Or they walked for 381 days. And I wanted to just come back around to this Voting Rights Act. It used to be prior to the Voting Rights Act, only 23% of African Americans were actually registered to vote. But when this act came into law, literally 61% of the people who were African American started to vote. So I say all this to kind of add to what Camille and what Charis was saying about sometimes people don't see the point. They can be very frustrating. We have to know a little bit of this history to know why it's so important to kind of keep moving forward and keep pushing. I do want to mention something that's important to us now. In 2013, unfortunately, the Supreme Court took a key provision out of the Voters' Rights Act. It was called Section 5. And basically, this was a ruling that allowed us to be able to kind of do pre-clearance in some of these states where we'd had all these problems, particularly southern and western states. These are states which would normally have these really restrictive voting rights. The day that this particular component was struck down, Texas, Arizona immediately started pulling out some of these restrictive voting rights, like you have to be able to have ID to vote. And it sounds reasonable. But then what they add to it is you have to be able to show your birth certificate so that you can get proper ID in order for you to be able to vote. So you have to then spend that extra money, usually $20 to $30 on the average for that birth certificate, so you can show that you actually are a citizen to get your license to be able to vote or some kind of ID to vote. So it's once again a de facto poll tax. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's not unreasonable, but it's pretty unreasonable. Next slide. I just wanted to just kind of end with the fact that African Americans have always had to kind of fight to vote, but it's important. We are citizens, and we should remember that our voice is our vote. So we have to make sure that we do all we can to have some kind of say in how this country is run and how it's going to impact our lives. Voting, even on a local level, impacts your district attorney, your sheriff, your public schools, your city council, your roads, your water, everything. So we have to remember to vote. And I just want to conclude with 2 resources I think that might be useful, because as I stated, if we just know a little bit of history, we can pull it forward today and see it's not new. There's this wonderful film that came out this year called Suppressed 2020, The Fight to Vote. It's about 30 minutes in length. Please take a look at it. It's featuring, of course, Stacey Abrams. I have to make a plug for Stacey. I'm originally from Georgia. That's my home state. Stacey Abrams technically should have been our governor. Because of restrictive voting rights policies regarding identification, because of suppression tactics. It was discovered just this past September that over 55,000 votes were removed and purged, or people were caged. That means they weren't allowed to vote. That small amount would have made the difference, and she would be governor right now. Okay. The next video I want you to make sure you have a chance to see is from the Reverend Dr. William Barber. He is a well-known minister, and I think he's a part of the Moral Majority of the Poor People's Campaign. And he's got this wonderful video that's out that just came out called We Can't Stay Here from Fusion Films. It shows you scripturally how we can look at how voting and the process from a scriptural perspective influences our lives. So that's what I really wanted to say. And thank you so much for your time. And just remember to vote November the 3rd.
Now y'all know why she's called the doctor. That was an amazing presentation. How many of y'all, if you'd be honest in the chat, you were taking screenshots of the presentation? Like, I need that. I'm going to speak on that on my own. Make sure you attribute credit. Isn't that right, Dr. Salisbury?
Thank you.
That was an amazing, and thank you for sharing that. And what I really heard you saying through that is, don't let grit and determination be a thing of the past. Mm-hmm. We've often heard it said that if you don't take care of things, like, you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it. Unfortunately. And so that was just an eye-opening presentation. I mean, how many of y'all, even in the comments, I know we know about Rosa Parks, but how many of y'all knew about Mr. Parks? And I was just thinking about that grit and determination. I mean, would you be so willing to fight so hard for what you believe in that you would uproot your entire life and go somewhere to just rebuild yourself? That was amazing. I see you're getting some comments right here. Great history lesson. Wonderful. You got the 100 emoji. So that's good. Especially. That's amazing. So thank you for that. And with that being said, we have one more panelist tonight, Cameron Bell from BLOC, which if you do not know what that stands for, it stands for the Virginia Black Leadership Organizing Collaborative. And so Cameron, would you just take a couple of moments and speak to us about the importance of either mobilizing your members or any insights you could provide us in reference to voter engagement, drop boxes, whatever you could share to really expand our knowledge on this voter engagement?
Absolutely, right? We're getting a lot of questions from people about what can they do, how can they mobilize their friends, their family, their communities for the selection. So I want to start, right, by saying when we talk about mobilizing voters, we really emphasize meeting people where they are, right? When you're having conversations with people, first ask questions, right? If someone's kind of apprehensive or might not be convinced they want to vote, they don't think the system is going to work for them or whatever their reason is, ask them, do you mind sharing why? Just a simple why, right? And ask it, right? No judgment, just listen. Really be curious about that, because that helps us understand where people are coming from and what they're experiencing. Because remember, everyone's experience with the system is not going to be the same. And so we have to be cognizant of that when we're talking about why we participate. And so you ask the questions, right? What issues do you care about? What do you want to see changed in our community? And then listen for the response and listen to understand, not just to respond, right? I think sometimes we can get caught up in, okay, I got to get that right next thing to say, and how am I going to respond? Don't worry about it. Just hear what they have to say, what's going on in their lives for them. And then make sure that they're feeling heard, right? Like not like you're checking them off a box just to say, okay, I talked to somebody today about voting. And then once you're done listening, be prepared to share information, right? But be informed about it. Know what's going on. Know, for example, that we have more than just president and vice president on our ballot this election. We're voting for 2 proposed constitutional amendments in Virginia. We are also voting on U.S. Senate and U.S. House Representatives. And some areas might have local elections and other things. So, be knowledgeable of those things as well, right? Also know how those policies will impact our lives, right? Know what those positions actually do. Right. So if someone's talking about how they want to change education and they mention something about city council, help them understand, okay, well, city council might impact this aspect, or maybe not. Maybe your city council doesn't impact it. Right. But you have to know these things in order to educate your community as you're talking to them. And then be honest. Right. Be honest with yourself about why you vote, and also with that person that you're talking with about why they vote, or why they should vote. And don't oversell the vote. I see this a lot when I talk with people who are disillusioned, right? And I think a lot of that comes from people have oversold them the vote for so long, right? Oh, if you vote for my candidate, everything's going to change. It's going to get better. And we know things don't change overnight. And so, right. If, I'm waiting for that change. I'm like, okay, well, I voted. A lot of things materially didn't quite change the way I wanted. And now you tell me to vote again? Anybody who's thinking logically might go, well, actually, I don't know about this, right? And so I think that's where we have to be really careful. Don't oversell the vote, but don't undersell it either. But just be very clear and upfront and honest. This is a step. It's a strategy. It's a tool to use to help us create this world that we need, that we deserve. But, it doesn't end there. At BLOC, we always stress it starts here. we believe voting is a first step, and we want y'all to stay engaged after that first step. So after election day, y'all please call me. Like my phone is going up right now. My inbox is full right now because everybody wants to talk about voting. I need that same energy on the day after election day when there's going to be so much advocacy work to continue, right? So that's really how we want to mobilize for long-term sustainable change, right? Use the example for the Montgomery bus boycott, 300 plus days. That wasn't just, they didn't just vote one day and go home, right? So I need everyone to keep that same energy after election day. And then if you're thinking more practical, right? Like, okay, in my congregation, or I'm part of a club or a social group or whatever group you're part of, right? There are so many ways you can help mobilize. For one, here at BLOC, we are currently running the Democracy on the Block program. And so basically what we're asking is can you commit 6 hours? That's it. Just 6 hours between now and election day to volunteer with us to make sure our community is vote ready. That could look like calls. That could look like anything that you are able and willing to do to donate your time, your talent, and your time to this. But you can sign up with us. We'll share the link so you all can have it. Email me directly or call me directly, and we can get you set up. And don't worry if you've never volunteered before, never done phone banking, or never, you're like, I don't know. Get you set up. It'll be fine. And it's a great way to stay engaged and stay connected and build bridges within our community. Also, as a church or as a group, as an org, you can host us for a workshop. We do in-depth workshops on all the new laws, what to expect on election day, restoration of rights. I mean, it's all the information that you as a voter would need to know, right? And we try to go through that and answer all the questions that we have. If we don't know, right, we are very diligent about researching and finding out the answers. So that's an option, right? You could host us for a workshop between now and election day to make sure you and your network, even if it's just your family, right? Your family, whatever on Zoom, hit us up. We'll pop in and make sure everybody's good to go. You can also, we have a link that we have literally a one-stop shop for all your voter info in Newport News and Hampton. You can share that as well, just so that people can see all the dates, all the deadlines. You can post it to your website, your Facebook, whatever. Just put it in your email blast to your organization or to your group, just to make sure we're getting the word out. And then if you're hosting a socially distant event, right, whether it's a church drive-up communion or something, or just socially distant walk in the park, whatever it is, looks like that, as long as we're being safe with COVID.
Right. Yeah.
We have flyers that have voter information on it that we can help give out. Whatever it is to make it happen, we will do. It's just a matter of connecting with us. But the key is to remember, what are your talents, right? What skills do you have that you want to bring to this work? Because it doesn't have to be this big, cumbersome, voting outreach. Text 5 people right now. Right now, say, hey, did you know the deadline is next week to register to vote? And did you also know it's not just new registrations, but update? Like if you moved, make sure you update it. If you have a name change, make sure you update it or check your status. You might come up inactive and not have known it. Simple things like that can go a long way. So don't underestimate your own individual power is what I would say for helping make sure we mobilize this vote, because it really does start with you. And then you can plug into orgs like ours and just continue that work throughout elections.
You are a well of resource. Thank you for sharing that. You dropped so much knowledge, and I feel like you really took the intimidation out of voting. Even, I think like you said, a lot of times when we hear voter outreach, we think, oh my goodness, this is going to be an 8-hour day. It's a whole bunch we have to do. But I mean, even with what you said, a simple thing of texting 5 people, your friends, hey, you registered to vote. Hey, I know you live in this state, but you're working here now. Hey, are you registered here? Do you have an absentee ballot? I mean, there are small steps that we could take. And so you gave us a whole lot of information. And I'm sure someone is like, hey, you said, call me, email me. You're going to give me your contact information. You're going to drop that in the comments so we can know, because I'm sure that somebody is going to do that. Because another thing that I heard you say was it's not just about the vote, right? But the follow through and the advocacy. And I just thought that was worth mentioning, because you do have so many people that are like, oh, once I get elected or once I vote, then that's it and I'm done. But what you're saying is there's more work to be done after, November 3rd and whatever these other major elections are. And so that was extremely helpful. And I got to poll the audience really quickly. How many of y'all are enjoying this segment? Let me see you in the comments. if you're enjoying it and you haven't shared this yet, you should, because you don't know what's on the other side of your share and who could really be benefiting from this information. And even if you share it now and people don't hop on till later, that's good, because they can watch it on the replay from top to end. And so we're going to transition so that we can bring up all of our panelists. We're going to enter into our Q&A session. Good. I see that people are saying it's very informative, that they're enjoying it. And that's the reason that we did it. We put this on for our community so that we can engage with one another. Thank you. I'm glad that you all are agreeing that it's very professional. We really appreciate that comment. And so we're going to bring our panelists back up, because we want to enter into a time of Q&A. And so if you are in the comments and you have a question, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat. Maybe it's a question about voting, or perhaps something that one of these presenters said really struck a nerve, or you want to affirm something they said, or maybe you want them to expound upon it. Please feel free to put that in the comment. But nevertheless, I have a couple of questions that I would just like to ask our panelists that maybe you all are thinking of, but maybe didn't think to write them. And so I'm going to ask a couple of questions to our panelists. And the first one is this: what is the law on felons voting?
So I'll jump in on that. So returning citizens or formerly incarcerated people can vote. They just have to apply to get their rights restored. And just to be clear, just one who might not be from Virginia, I'm speaking specifically to Virginia law. So if you are in another state, please check, your state's laws, and because other states have different processes. But in Virginia, as long as you're done with probation and parole, you can apply to get your rights restored at restore.virginia, all spelled out, .gov, G-O-V. And you just go through the application. It takes like 5 minutes tops. And it goes through the system, and it goes through the Office of the Secretary of the Commonwealth. The governor signs off on it. And then once the rights are granted back, it restores the right to vote, the right to serve in a jury, the right to run for office, and the right to be a notary. But one thing to note, you have to then apply to register to vote, right? It's not an automatic registration that happens. The rights get granted, and then you say, yay, I got them back. Then you go to the registrar's page and apply to register to vote.
Yeah, thank you for that. We do have an audience question tonight from Tammy Lynn Summers, and she asks, how do we ensure a lasting commitment to voting even after a consequential election such as this one?
I'll try. I think one of the things you have to do is find unique ways to give information to people when they can really receive it. It doesn't have to be always a lengthy panel discussion like this, but just a few minutes of a refresher, like a constant boost. Because if it's always in their face, almost like, oh, did you know fact? I think that people say, oh, I can start connecting the dots. Unfortunately, a long time ago, we used to have civics in classes, high school, junior high school. I'm still actually old enough to remember having it. And a lot of people don't have it. So if they don't go to a school that stresses it, they really don't understand what voting does and how it impacts their everyday life.
Thank you for that. Does anybody else want to add on? If not, we'll go ahead and take the next comment. Okay. The next comment says, can you share again the importance of voting because so many say my vote doesn't count?
So I guess to recap kind of what I was saying earlier, right? For me, it would be about engaging in a dialogue around what do you care about, right? What does count to you? What do you want to see change? Because as people feel disillusioned, there's something that they probably want to see change in their community or in their life. Even if it's like, well, I just want to make more money. That's real because me too, right? So it's how do we connect that back to the vote? And then that really comes around with educating people about what that looks like, what civics is, what is our government set up, how does all of this work, what impacts us and what doesn't. I think sometimes people, like I said, can be disillusioned because if it doesn't change right now, of course it doesn't feel important because I need this change right now. But if we show it's gradual, it's a step, it's a process, then I think it'll kind of help mitigate some of those disillusionments.
Sounds good. Hey, here's a question that many may be thinking about. Is it too late to register for this election?
It's not. In Virginia, you have until October 13th, next week on Tuesday. 5 p.m. for a paper application and 11:59 p.m. if you're doing it online.
Wow.
Got it. So you have a full 7 days. If you have not registered to vote, please take care of that this week. We don't want to push it to the very end. We want to make sure that our vote is secured and taken care of. Here's another one. How far in advance of November 3rd must we send in our mail-in ballots?
So there's no, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just about to say you have to send it 10 to 15 days before. And I believe we talked about it before. You said it is counted until the 3rd day after November 3rd, right?
Yeah. I'll just add to that. The law allows up until the 3rd day if it's postmarked by election day. But again, please don't wait for these deadlines. Send it back. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Here's a question from our audience. KB Brad says, what kind of advice can you give on getting someone who's registered to vote and has previously voted but no longer wants to vote?
Well, I'll speak on that. In terms of like, I know personally, I was speaking to some family members that were like, it's no point. And then we broke down just kind of starting at the local level and how once you start there, it kind of, you get a bigger picture. So like after you start at the local level and you realize that little bit of impact that your vote had, that it can go to the presidential, I think that's probably the best way. You have to give them their own experiences, like let them know that what happens to you personally can be changed by just making a simple, like altering thing to vote, like something as small as a problem that you had could be changed just if you decide to actually vote. And it doesn't get any better unless you do decide to vote.
Right.
I would like to just follow up on just what Camille said. Something that happened a couple of years ago. Do you all remember Michael Brown, the gentleman, I believe, who was shot? He was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, many people in that town, I believe, of St. Louis, did not vote at high numbers. And when he was killed, because the district attorney is an elected position, they chose not to bring his case to trial. And then I think maybe 2 election cycles later, they voted that district attorney out, voted a new district attorney in, so that if something like that was to happen again, at least it has the opportunity to go to trial. Now we know there's a connection, it's a process with all this, and some of these people are connected, but at least it was something that was even thought of as being, having your citizens' rights being reviewed. So people don't see even something as simple as your district attorney, if you have to get assistance because of the legal system, getting help, it really helps everyday life.
Yeah, thank you for that. Here is another audience question. Can anyone vote early?
Yes. So in Virginia, you don't need an excuse to vote early anymore. You can go ahead and go to your local registrar's office and cast your ballot. Just bring, your ID, mask, your own black pen, be safe. But yeah, you can vote early without any excuse.
And thinking about voting early too, let's say someone requested their mail-in ballot, but they changed their mind and they want to vote in person. Can they do that?
Yes, they can. You would have to just take that ballot that you got in the mail back with you to the registrar's office and say, hey, I didn't use this. And then they'll take it from you and let you vote in person.
I think the theme we were talking about earlier before we came on the panel was it doesn't matter if it's mail in or in person. We just want you to vote. That's the most important part. But how about, I've heard about drive-through voting. Is that an option in the state of Virginia?
So one of the things that we can do, I believe, is if you drive to the curb and you say that you need a ballot, I do believe and Ms. Bell will be able to better address it. They do believe they'll bring it to you. I do know that a lot of times there's specific rules, particularly if you have disability, they can help you with that. If you have an issue with seeing, sometimes there's an audio ballot for individuals who aren't able to see the names. You can actually bring the audio ballot process to you so that you can hear out the names of the candidates. So I do believe that is something that's available to us. So I do.
Same, I think in Maryland as well. Sorry. I'm not in Virginia, so that is something that they're also pushing here is drive-in.
Great. How about this? I'm sure, Cameron, you could answer this one. Can people volunteer as a poll worker? If so, can they get information to sign up?
Yes, and I would tell them to reach out to their registrar's office. They normally have an application readily available for you to apply and the training you need in order to be a poll worker.
Okay. And we're going to wrap up on the Q&A segment. So if you all in the audience have any more questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, because I do want to honor all of our times tonight, especially those of our panelists, and we thank them for what they have contributed so far. But here's another question. Is it better to vote by mail or vote in person? Does it matter?
I would say it doesn't matter, just as long as if you're voting in mail that you get your ballot submitted on time. Like, make sure you don't even have to wait a certain amount, like 10 days before. You don't even have to wait 10 days before. Just send it in as soon as you can, just to make sure it's counted.
Wonderful. Okay, here's another one. I received my ballot. It's hypothetical, right? And it says that I have to have a witness to sign it. Is this true? Do you have to have a witness in all states or in certain states?
So I'll speak for Virginia. The courts just ordered that you do not have to have a witness signature in order to vote absentee by mail. So that's for Virginia.
Okay, got it. Someone says Prince William County has drive-up voting. Really easy, did it today. That's great. Okay, this one I just have to ask. Let's say, hypothetical again, right? I received a text indicating you could vote online with a link to sign up. Somebody, I do not know how these people get our numbers. First of all, I've been called so many names other than my own. And I'm like, that's not my name. Are you with me? Yes or no? And I just kind of leave it alone. But I received a text indicating you could vote online with a link to sign up. I didn't click the link as I haven't heard anything about online voting. But do you have any insight on this issue? Do you trust links?
I don't click the link. Is guidance. I have not seen in all my work so far anything about being able to vote online through a link. So please just, again, call when in doubt, registrar. Honestly, that is going to be your best bet.
Yeah,
that's a good takeaway for tonight. When in doubt, or if you have questions, call your registrar. Okay, I think did we answer this one? By what date do I need to register to vote, in case someone came on and they missed that earlier?
Yep. Tuesday, October 13th.
Got it.
And just as a note, anybody that's going to be 18 by election day can also register by that day.
Please do that. How do I know who is on the ballot and how to vote for them? I think you alluded to earlier, Cameron, not to just know who the main two parties are or two people are for the primary election or the main election, but there are also other bills or other people up there. How do I get access to that information?
So we have a basically one-stop shop on our website, ba-bloc.org, and it's you put I think it's something about voting at our homepage, but it'll go through and has all the dates. We also have what's on the ballot, again, local to Hampton Roads area for Virginia. But if you're not in Virginia, call your registrar.
That is the theme sentence of the night. Call your registrar. Two more questions. If the audience doesn't have anything, we're going to get ready to wrap up. But here's another one. How many forms of identification should I bring if I'm voting in person?
isn't it one?
Mm-hmm. Again,
there's a list.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about this before. In Virginia, we've expanded the voter ID, acceptable forms of voter ID. So it doesn't just have to be a photo ID. It could also be something like a pay stub or utility bill could also count as your voter ID. You only have to bring one though. And we also have that information on our website as well. So to see what the full list of acceptable voter ID is.
I just wanted to add one more thing. You can actually track your absentee ballot online, I believe, in Virginia. You probably need to check with the Board of Election to see specifically the process, but I just wanted to put that little piece out there. Mm-hmm.
I think we have a question from the audience if anyone wants to tackle this. What is the main idea of each proposed amendment on the ballot?
So Ms. Bell's going to wrap it up, but I can at least say this. That information is available at her website, Virginia BLOC website. They actually outline the amendments that are on your ballot for the state of Virginia, what they would mean for you, the pros and the cons, and then you can decide how you wish to vote.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Amendment 1 is talking about a redistricting commission, which we're encouraging a no vote on. And Amendment 2 is about allowing a property tax exemption for disabled veterans.
Another audience question, does the site have numbers to reach the registrar's offices in Virginia?
So you can use the Citizen Portal, which we also link in our website. But if you log into your Citizen Portal, it'll pull up your voter record, and included in that is how to contact your registrar.
Got it. And then last but certainly not least, should we vote early or wait until November the 3rd? What are your thoughts?
Vote early.
Why would you suggest that we vote early, if you don't mind?
I've heard the cliche, make it too big to rig.
That's good.
I just think it's important to vote early just to make sure that your vote is like for sure counted. Like you just want to make sure that you get it in on time. That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with all of the COVID stuff and just health concerns, there's so much going. It's just a lot. So I just think it's safer to go ahead and avoid those lines on election day, and just get it out the way now.
And I do want to just add one more thing. I did mention it in my little historical overview that there was intimidation tactics that were used. And unfortunately, a few days ago, there was a request for people to watch the polls carefully, which is code language to attempt to intimidate people while they vote. And we have to be cautious and careful and, watch our safety, physical safety. So I do think by voting early, you can avoid some of that and prevent there being any type of negative interactions.
That was helpful insight. Thank you for bringing that up. So I hope y'all really enjoyed this presentation. Let us know in the comments, is this something that we should do again? Thank you all for your wonderful presentations. I have a takeaway from each person. I just want to summarize it for those of you who may have come on a little bit later. We had Camille and Cheris who talked to us about the importance of the youth vote. And really what I got from both of them is that your vote shapes your future, especially as a young person. And if you fail to vote, you're really yielding your power to other people. And so it's the young vote, which they were encouraging us, that can really sway the election. And so the youth vote is considered for those who are 30 and under, 18 to 30. So please make your voice heard. And another thing that I love, it came from their mouth, not mine, that don't complain about the election or the state, current state that we're in if you're not going to make your voice heard. And so we heard from them, and that was wonderful. And then we got the dissertation PowerPoint from Dr. Salisbury, and she really was encouraging us that, if people back then made significant changes in the past with less resources, then the question is, what's stopping us now? And in all of this, I really heard her during her presentation saying, don't waste your freedom. We have to use it wisely. And then last but certainly not least, Cameron from BLOC, she really told us that it's not just about the vote, but the follow through and the advocacy. And I love this simple phrase that she said too. She said, don't knock a simple why. But when you ask people, why don't you vote or why don't you do this? She encouraged us to ask without judgment, which can be very difficult because many of us, when we talk to each other, it's not necessarily relational. We're talking with a response already in our head, right? But what would it look like to actually talk and do some active listening instead of automatically responding? And also understanding that everyone's experience with the system is not going to be the same. And so when you talk to people, when you engage with other people, make sure that you are informed and that you know what is going on. So those were a few key takeaways that I had from tonight. Of course, if you all want to put in your takeaways, you can do that as well. I'll read some of them. We had someone that said, yes, please do this again before the election. Someone said, my almost 60-year-old father applied to be a poll worker for the first time in his life this year. That's amazing. We're getting comments that says great information, that this must be done again. Thank you all, that it was very insightful. It was very helpful. We got some kudos to the youth that shared with us tonight as well. It was funny. I think it was you, Camille, while you were sharing, and you said the CAF. I just wanted to tell some people that's short for cafeteria, you know, in case they didn't know. But a lot of people are saying that this was very informative. Cameron, you got a shout out that you're amazing. And so this was very helpful. Yes. And as we get ready to bring this to a close, I want to remind you all of a couple of important dates and websites. I think we said October 14th was the last day to register to vote. Make sure that you are, did I say that right, Cameron? Correct me if I'm wrong.
13th, Tuesday.
Thank you so much. Do not listen to me. Listen to Cameron, who is representing BLOC. October the 13th, that is a Tuesday. It's the last day to register to vote. So you have 7 days from now to make sure that you get that in. Then November 3rd, of course, being the major election. And we also have a graphic that we're going to put up that shows you all of the major websites to get all of the information that you need, whether that is a reference to Dropbox locations or early voting locations. So we just want to put that up for you all. So if you just want to take your phone out and take a picture of that so that you can save that and look them up in your own time. But we just want to do our part here. C3 with VA Block, with the chapters represented here from Hampton, of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, of educating you all and keeping you all in the loop and keeping you all in the know. And so we certainly hope that you enjoyed this experience tonight. Again, I was your moderator, your host, Dr. Leslie Francisco McClendon from C3 Hampton. If you all want to stay engaged with what's going on, please feel free to give all of our Facebook pages a like. And also, I want to thank again our panelists, and I want to thank you all, the audience, for your participation, including our partners and sponsors, policymakers, C3 staff, VA Block, and Gamma Upsilon Omega members who organize this event. And then last but certainly not least, or this might, you know, I'm a preacher, I have two closes. So before that one, I want to remind you all that National Voter Education Week is actually this week, October the 5th through the 9th. And so that was one of the reasons that we wanted to kick this off as well. And so I know we probably have viewers from all around the nation. So I want you to do us a favor and look up your own state-specific information. Tonight was really garnered towards Virginia, but perhaps those of you who are streaming with us are not living in Virginia. So please make sure that you look up your own state-specific information so that you can know what's going on in your area. To our panelists, we have about 1 minute left. Did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was really nice. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for having us.
Y'all made it happen. This was wonderful. We are so appreciative. So many virtual hand claps and emojis for you all. And then this time, last but not least, as we close, we would love for you all to complete the town hall evaluation form, which we are going to put in the comments, I believe. And so you can access that once this broadcast is over. And so may the Lord bless and keep all of us, and may we all go to the polls and vote in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all so much for joining us, and please stay tuned when we have more events like this. God bless.